Our fourth play, On the Rail Siding, was written by Walt Vail, who was 18 when Hitler and his SS were finally destroyed. And now for your voting consideration, On a Rail Siding.
The worst thing that happened to me during the Great War was an incident involving a trainload of Jewish children. These children, ages 4 to 14, had been separated from their parents and were to be reunited. I don't know how it happened, but some blunderer had made a horrible mistake, and I was assigned to correct it. Perhaps it was some tender-hearted person, if there were any left in Europe at that time, had attempted to save the children from their fate of their parents with a separation order. In fact, their parents and relatives had been loaded onto trains and shipped to Poland, where they had been exterminated by the SS. The children left behind were held in schools and churches and orphanages. It was a nightmare, a bureaucratic nightmare. What were we to do with them now that their families were gone? The order from Berlin said they were to be reunited, and there was only one way to do that. I had no choice, so I arranged for a train of 50 cattle cars, and I had those children loaded onto trucks and loaded onto the trains. I was personally on the loading platform to see that all went smoothly, but I was not prepared for the cries of "Mama! Mama!" and for their wailing and howling in naked fear. They were told that they were to be reunited, but they would not listen. They would not be calm. They judged us not by what we said, but by our actions. They knew they were boarding that train for death, and they would not let us pretend otherwise. It was disconcerting, for we told our lies as much for ourselves as for our victims. Disconcerting to have one's lies thrust into one's teeth by Jewish children. Clearly, they had never been taught respect for adult authority. How their cries pierced me. I can still hear them to this day. I hated them for reminding me that I was a murderer of children. It was all I could do to control myself, to refrain from releasing my anger by beating one of them to death. But I held myself in. I swallowed my hate, knowing I'd be revenged soon enough. If there had been tears in me, I would have wept for those children and for myself. Yet I just wanted to kill them, to get them over with, to get them out of my head. Get out, out, out! We knew what life was all about in those days. If you were not a victim, you were a killer. I killed, and I proved myself superior to all those victims because I lived and they died. That's the final reason the final standard. Who lives, who dies. Survival is everything. And I was creating a better world, a world for people of culture and understanding. I did the hard and dirty work that had to be done, and I'm proud of that. But you will say that death as a victim is preferable to life as an exterminator. I've heard you. Better an honorable death as a victim than a life of dishonor as an exterminator. What nonsense. No such code of honor survives. You might as well claim there is a God when we have proven that God does not exist. This life is all there is. This life. The path of salvation is no longer open. Since those days, I have enjoyed much being alive. Enjoyed it very much, thank you. I drink my beer. I savor my food in conscience. And I fornicate when possible. I have no use for your ethics, your rules, your religions, or your codes of behavior and honor. I spit on them. Each moment that I remain alive exonerates me for my killing in order not to be a victim. Each moment of life, I win, they lose. Eventually I will die, and there will be no heaven, and no hell, and no Jewish souls awaiting to torture me for my crimes. They are gone. They don't exist. Bones at the bottom of a pit, or smoke dissolved into the atmosphere. And some days the air becomes heavy with their essence. I can feel myself breathing them in and out of my lungs, reminding me that all they are now are bits of ozone blocking out the sun a bit, falling on the forests, thick and heavy, like acid rain. I'm sure their dust would choke me if it could, but it can't. There are no Jewish souls, none. Nevertheless, I think of them often these days. I admit that I avoid sleep if I can, for I dream a lot about that trainload of Jewish children. Oddly enough, it seems only yesterday that I paced that railroad platform, urging the children onto the train, examining each boxcar to see that it was secure. A vivid memory. But on the day of the train, I saw only masses of screaming children. I noticed no individuals. I didn't see a single face clearly in that mob, for if I had singled one out, I would have beat it to a bloody pulp with the butt of my weapon. How is it now when I dream that recurring dream? I see each individual child's face grow more alive and more vivid. For years I did not notice this feature of my dream. But lately, as I dream, I am patrolling that railroad platform. Between each slot of the cattle cars, I see the eyes and the mouth and the teeth and the soft white cheeks of each imprisoned child. I see their hair and eyebrows, brown and beautiful. Their small, tender ears, tinged with red by the cold air. I see their knitted caps. I see their fingers clutching the boards of the railroad cars, their fingernails, the colorless fuzz on the backs of their hands. I see their tears flooding out of their eyes, streaming across their faces and down their slim white necks. That mass of humanity on its way to death has become several thousand individual children. I find myself giving them names, stopping to speak with them, asking where they are from, who their parents are, how well they're doing in school, what their hopes and dreams for the future may be. I stop and ask them things in life, or in my dreams, that I never wanted to know in life. One little girl, a beautiful creature who reminded me of my sister when she was young. I stopped to ask her to remember me in her prayers. I was not being ironic or cruel or cynical. I asked her seriously to remember me in her prayers. Why would I do such a thing, even in a dream? There is no God. I gave up the idea of him long ago. I am sufficient unto myself. The path of salvation is closed to me. I am unrepentant. Say what you will. If that Ouroboros returned again tomorrow, I would again be the killer and you would be the victim. Forgiveness is something of no value to me. I will avoid sleep. If I don't sleep, I will not dream. The solution is as easy as that. The last time I slept, those children began asking questions and speaking to me. They stopped screaming for their mamas and began to ask questions. Why, they asked. Why? And I could hear the tone and the inflection of each individual child's voice as they asked, each one separate and distinct to me, although they asked the same question. Why? 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 I'm not obliged to answer them. I'll stay awake and I won't have to answer them. A killer, a murderer is not expected to explain events to his victim. No, I don't have to answer them. But I will. I will answer them in my own time. I will give my answer when I see those children in heaven.
Thank you, actor-reader Bob Clark. This play brings up so many issues. Do you have any questions for our director, Sheila Clark? Wayne?
So this is less of a question and more of a comment. I just wanted to say thank you to Bob Clark for the courage to portray two despicable characters for us today to bring the challenging topics to us, and I really respect it.
So, why did I choose to do this play and direct it? I mentioned earlier that I'm a clinical psychologist. There's a phenomena that all war veterans are dealing with right now, and we as a country are dealing with and have been since war began. If anyone attended our presentation about 6 years ago, when we did What I Heard About Iraq, we presented post-traumatic stress disorder syndrome then from the Greek perspective. that was written back then. This is a typical post-traumatic stress disorder. Happens to be done in the style of the Nazis, but it applies to all of our soldiers returning to war now. They deal with these very same issues. Call them a different child's name. Call them by miwash. It's the same issue that the soldiers are faced with. Currently, we have a soldier of ours committing suicide every 18 hours. We currently have more suicide soldiers, U.S. soldiers, than there are soldiers being killed in conflict. We have, on the national average, 105 suicides every day of our civilians. Of those, 22 are war veterans of all our wars. So I hope that you see this beyond it being something limited to time, and I hope that you can see that this is the issue of our soldiers today. And thank you for your kindness.
Thank you, Sheila. There might be other questions. Does anyone else have any questions? And what it deals with? I mean, Sheila, one of the things that our soldiers and this civilian soldier who was obeying orders, just obeying orders, and obeying orders in order to survive, is that the kind of thing that our soldiers are facing today? Do you have any?
Yeah, a lot of them that are coming back.
Are just
one of the things that is not being looked at with our soldiers that I find they're the ones that I do treat is the spiritual conflict that they are engaging in. Currently, the research is saying, oh, you know, it's because they're using drugs and alcohol. Oh, it's because they had a mental disorder before they went into the service. There's a lot of downplaying of why this is occurring, and there's nothing that addresses the spirituality of the conflict that these men are engaged in. And this play, I thought, showed that very well.
Yes, I agree. Thank you again. Anything else? No? Sheila is determined to get off this stage, so thank you, Sheila. Thank you very much.